Good morning, friends. First, I hope you guys are all doing well. I hope this lockdown is treating you well. um, it is a difficult time for many people, but at the same time, I believe that God is doing some amazing things in our midst at the same time. And I guess for me and my family, we've had some great breakthroughs. Both, I guess, in our family time has been fantastic. Our finances are doing amazing, and my job, I'm absolutely loving my job. God is doing great stuff where I'm working, and I'm very excited. And so I'm really grateful that God is at work right now. But I understand that not everyone can see that at the moment. And that's actually what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about what is God doing at the moment. Some of us will have great stories of how He is at work in our lives where we can clearly see it and we're engaging with that. Other people are probably seeing more of what the enemy is doing. Maybe we're focused a bit more heavily on some of the tough stuff. So what I want to do this morning is I want to open up our Bibles to John chapter 5. I'm just going to read a few verses from probably about verse 16 onwards, and we'll get stuck into it, hey? But before I do, let's pray. Daddy God, we love you and we thank you that you are always at work. We thank you that you are so good to us. We thank you that your love never fails. And God, I pray that today as I share, I pray that you would touch people's hearts. I pray it would encourage them and maybe even inspire them to join in with what you are doing in the world today. I say it in your name, Lord Jesus. Okay, here we go, guys. Starting John chapter 5, verse 16. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, he just healed a crippled guy or an invalid in John chapter 5 earlier on. Okay, because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. In his defense, Jesus said, "My Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working." God is always at work. That's awesome. For this reason, they tried to kill all the more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. What a crazy thought, hey? You know, Jesus told us to call God Father as well. Amazing, isn't it? Anyway, let's keep going. Jesus gave them this answer. Very truly, I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can do only what he sees his Father doing, because whatever the Father does, the Son also does. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all he does. Yes, and he will show him even greater works than these, so that you will be amazed. I absolutely love that. There's a couple of really cool verses in there. But I guess the first one that I wanted to talk about was that God is always at work, even though we can't see it. I guess to the Pharisees at this stage, the Jewish leaders here, they began to persecute him. They did not recognize what God was doing in this season. They didn't understand. They did not get it. And so Jesus had to rebuke them and tell them. And we see throughout all four accounts of the Gospels that there's this toing and froing between Jesus and religious leaders, because the religious people can't see what God is doing. I wonder if that is happening to too many of us at the moment. I'm trying to stay off Facebook at the moment. I'm not enjoying it because I'm seeing so many believers and other people as well who are trying to just keep identifying what the enemy is doing. Some people are saying, we agree with this politician, but not that politician. Insert either side. I don't care whether it's the left or the right. It's the Liberal or Labor, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans. Everyone has different opinions, and Christians on both sides as well, by the way. As hard as it is to believe for some of you diehards out there, there are actually good believers on both sides of the political opinion. There are these huge debates around vaccinate or not vaccinate. There are things around wearing masks or not wearing masks. There are things around should we comply to the government's restrictions or not. There's a whole heap of things that you can agree with or not agree with. There's people saying, we agree with these doctors and nurses, while others are saying, no, we don't like them. We like these ones over here who have a different opinion. So there's all these different opinions going on, and people are saying, look, that is what the devil is doing. That's what the enemy is doing. That's what he's tricked you. And look, I agree. We need to be aware of what the enemy is doing. Okay, we don't want to fall snare to that. But I think in this time, what we really need to do is say, God, what are you doing? What are you doing right now, Lord? Last week at work, we did a 24-hour block of prayer, which was fantastic. And I took the 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. shift. And this is what I asked God. I said, God, what are you doing in the world right now? Because his word says he is always working. He is always at work. And Jesus said he can't do anything unless he sees what the Father is doing. So I said, okay, Father, what are you doing? And I started thinking, I started remembering great things that are happening around the world. I thought of China, which is, I know they're getting slammed because of the coronavirus, or as some people call it, the China virus and all that sort of thing. But China is having this great awakening at the same time. There are millions of people coming to know Jesus. Mike Pence, VP of the US, he, in a speech, I think it was last year, he said that they were estimating that there was about 130 million Chinese Christians in the world. That's all over the world, not just in China. In China, they think there's around over or thereabouts 100 million Christians within China. It's growing fast. It's absolutely stunning what God is doing there. During this prayer time, I typed in fastest growing church in the world just to see what was going on. And I found all these articles and this documentary on Iran. I haven't watched the documentary yet. I'm going to try and watch that later on today, maybe. But in Iran, they're saying that the growth is just under 20% every year. How many new believers are coming to the Lord? I've known in Iran, I've heard amazing stories. I may have shared it with you before, but let me share it with you again. But in Iran, there was this guy, and he was smuggling Bibles. So his car was full of Bibles, and so he was driving along, and he was pretty worried because if he got caught, they'd kill him. And his car broke down in the middle of nowhere, just near this little village sort of thing. Unbeknownst to him, at the same time, a few days prior, this whole half the village woke up and they had a dream of Jesus in the middle of the night. The next night, the other half of the village had the same dream of Jesus. And so now everyone in the village is talking about Jesus, saying, okay, well, what do we do now? And that night, one person had a dream and said to everyone the following day, hey, we need to get the book. And so they all began praying to God that God would give them the book. And it just so happened that that day was the day that this man was smuggling Bibles into Iran. He didn't know where to drop them off. He didn't know what to do with them. He just knew he had this carload of Bibles. And as he's conked out on the side of the road and worried about what is about to happen, this man comes up and knocks on his window and says, hey, have you got the books? and of course he did. He had the Bibles. God is at work in the world today, and it is very, very exciting. You can go into, there's a whole bunch of great websites, and if you just do a bit of a Google search for where revival is happening around the world, where the fastest growing church is, and you will see that it's in all these really unlikely places. Iran is sort of known for, I guess, like the ideological center of Islam. China was sort of like the ideological center of communism. There's all these, I don't know, and you see that God is at work in those places. And what I noticed, and you can look through the whole list, check out Operation World, there's a whole list of where the church is growing fast. And what you would generally see is that in these places that they are persecuted. But what that means is that they don't have buildings. And so that they will meet together, but often it's secret. But they don't have big church buildings like we have here. Denominations don't feature anywhere near as prominently as what they do over here, because they're just all believers. And what that means is that there's no ordination. It means that there's no like paid clergy, that there's no paid ministers. What these people are doing is, out of the overflow of their heart, they're sharing the gospel. And what it also means is that because there's no, I guess, structure for people to fall back onto, it's relational. So people are following Jesus out of a relationship with him, but then they're coming to know Jesus out of relationship with their friends, with their family, with people that they know in their village. It's very, very relational. Discipleship happens not through someone like me teaching on a video call like this, although that is part of it, but real discipleship is happening around these places through people just gathering together with their friends and with their family, and people sharing what God has taught me, I'm going to teach you, which is exactly what Jesus said to do in the Great Commission. So it's very relational. And the other thing that I kept coming across was that they pray. They pray together. That's another key that you will see in all these places, is that they pray. So in the Iranian church, they say that they don't go and do anything without prayer because it could cost them their life, which means that they're praying. And so what they will do, they will pray for the person, but also the place in which to speak to them, because they could have the right person, but get the wrong place and they could be in huge trouble. And so they look for people of peace, houses of peace. They ask God, where are you moving? What are you doing right now? And I know it's the same in China. I've had lots of conversations with people who've been quite involved in that movement. And it's the same thing. They pray and they ask God, where are you already at work right now? And how can we join in? That's what they're doing. And in a very relational way, they're joining in. So let's ask the next question, which is, okay, well, that's what God is doing in the world. Well, what is he doing right here? I want to suggest that COVID is breaking down the barriers for the church to experience what the fastest growing churches in the world are already experiencing. Think about it. The buildings, we can't meet in buildings anymore. Denominations aren't meeting together as they used to. I'll come back to that in a minute, which also means ordination, or the paid clergy are in a very different space. And we are, because of COVID, we are actually being pushed into this place of relationship and of prayer. Let me give you some examples. There's amazing unity movements. And where I'm seeing them predominantly, there's a great unity movement over in the West, where hundreds of pastors are coming together, forming amazing friendships with one another for the sake of their city. And the reports that I'm hearing is that they're like family. These pastors love one another. The churches are beginning to work together. They're praying together for their city. I'm seeing and hearing about the same things happening over in Sydney, and throughout different pockets throughout Australia. This is beginning to happen. But so that's a denominational thing. And also because I guess, like I said, like we've been able to sort of fall back into our buildings. We've sort of been able to hide our Christianity behind this Sunday service sort of idea. But what's happening now is that people are being forced to live the gospel out now. If people are to disciple one another, the best way to do that, and churches are catching on to this now, is through relationships. We've been on this journey as Friends First, but when you look around all the other churches around the place, some of them are in a huge hole right now because they have been into sort of the event style of church, I guess. But COVID is breaking all that down, which is now meaning that people who used to be spectators watching are now the main players. This is what God is doing around the world, and this is what he is doing in Australia. He is pulling down the barriers to revival. He is pulling down the barriers to kingdom come. And so I think this is actually very, very exciting. Cindy Jacobs, she prophesied and over Australia towards the beginning of the year. And when it came out, I had people from this church, from Friends First. I had people from work. I had people that I used to hang out with when we were in Mozambique. I had all sorts of people from all around the world messaging me this word from Cindy Jacobs. And for whatever reason at the time, I did listen to it, but it didn't really strike me. But this time around, but I spoke to Gary during the week, and this time around, it really got me. And a few of the things that she said what God was doing was that God is gathering the church together. Amazing. She said that we are preparing for a mass harvest. And again, this has been prophesied a lot. And this third one, I absolutely love this one, is that he's positioning us to be the greatest missionary sending nation in the world. I absolutely love that one. And that one has been prophesied for ages and ages and ages. I absolutely love that. When we were in Mozambique, Sarah and I and Jed, when we were there, the Aussies just had this reputation for being, I guess, just larrikins, for being daredevils, so to speak, for being friendly and fun. And they would just run into the most dangerous places with a smile on their face. The world needs that. The world needs just these joyful people who are willing to suffer, to put themselves into harm's way. We met a bunch of Aussie missionaries over there who are in some of the craziest places where bullets are flying around, witch doctors are after them. There's all sorts of crazy things going on. Yet they do it with a smile on their face, and it's fun. So I guess these missionaries that God is going to raise up from Australia, they're just going to be radical. And Cindy Jacobs, she said, this is the season for Australians just to be Aussie. Just be yourself. Just be fun. But be your larrikin self. Be Australian. And I think that's an amazing word for us in this time. Finally, the last thing that Cindy Jacobs said, well, it's not the last thing, it's the last thing I'm going to point out, though, was that we are a Joseph nation. And I think for us in Victoria, we can probably identify pretty strongly with that at the moment. Joseph, who had this amazing vision, perhaps it's a vision that I've just shared now, the prophetic words that you've heard from Smith Wigglesworth and others in the past. This amazing vision. But then Joseph was thrown into slavery, into prison. Every time he seemed to work his way up, he got cut down again. And I think for a lot of us, we sort of feel like maybe we're stuck in the prison. Maybe we are stuck in slavery to this pandemic at the moment. But God raised him up. And that is the Joseph nation that Cindy is talking about. That as we prepare ourselves, and Gary spoke really well to this last week, that this is a season of preparation for us. And so I guess today, I just want to finish off. I want to round all this off by reading one more verse. Okay, one more passage, sorry. And we'll end on this, but it's from Isaiah chapter 6. And I've loved this passage. And this morning I was just reading it in my devotions. I thought I'd share it. But chapter 6 of Isaiah. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne. The train of his robe filled the temple. Above him was seraphim, each with 6 wings, 2 wings that covered their faces, and 2 covered their feet. And with 2 they were flying, and they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of his glory. And at the sound of their voices, the doorposts and thresholds shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. Woe to me, I cried. I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with the live coal in his hand, which he had taken with tongs from the altar. With it he touched my mouth and said, See, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for. And then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? I said, Here I am, send me. In this passage, Isaiah sees what God is doing in the world. He sees it. He hears it, and something inside of him bubbles up so that when God says, Whom shall I send and who will go? Straight away, Isaiah puts up his hand and says, Here I am, send me. This morning, I'm wondering whether we are ready to step into what God is doing around the world right now. I believe that he is breaking down the barriers for revival. He is breaking down the barriers for kingdom come. He is breaking down the barriers for seeing loads of people come to know Jesus and experience Jesus, the King, and his kingdom. I believe that. And he wants to co-labor with us. And he is inviting us into that. And I just wonder if some of us, maybe our eyes are on what the enemy is doing. Maybe we're trying to figure out what the government is doing or what these different groups are doing. And maybe we've just missed what God is doing. You see, when you see what God is doing, when you can really, really clearly see it, you go all in because it's amazing. That's what happened to Isaiah. That's what happened to the disciples and to the people in Jesus' day when they saw his ministry and worked out that that is what God is doing. They were all in. The people who were not all in were the ones who didn't see what God was doing. And so this morning, I want to give you the opportunity to say, God, I want to see what you are doing. And once you see what he is doing, I want you to hear the call of God saying, and who shall I send? Do you want to join in? Let's do it together. That's what it's saying. Let me pray. Father God, we want to thank you that you are so good to us. We want to thank you that you are at work in the world right now. Lord, give us eyes to see. To those listening to this, how about you make that your own prayer right now? Lord, give me eyes to see what you are doing. Give me ears to hear what you are saying. God, I pray for everyone listening to this. I just pray for the church in general, that we would have eyes to see what you are doing and ears to hear what you are saying. And Lord, I pray that we would be like Isaiah, who would shoot our hand up and say, yes, Lord, I'm in. I want to be part of what you are doing. God, I believe that you are breaking down all the barriers for seeing kingdom come, breaking down all the barriers for seeing great revival hit the whole entire world. And God, I want to be part of that. And I pray the same for the church. I pray the same for Friends First Community, that we would be a people that identify what you are doing and say, yes, Lord, I'm in. Thanks, everyone. I hope that you've got something out of that. Leave a comment below if there's anything in there that you want to chat through further. I might even put a couple of links in there so you can read about the church in Iran and all that sort of thing. But God bless you. Have an awesome week.